Hey everybody, it's Bust here to give you our constructed preview for the Forces from Beyond expansion. And so for me, the 3.11 patch notes have been released. For you, the patch notes have been out for about a day, and then the new cards will hit 2 or 3 hours after this video is released. And so you got a bit of time to listen to our sweet video before the cards come out, and then you can get some awesome decks together and be ready for the ladder. And so, first and foremost, the first things I wanted to call out is this is something that really chaps my ass. Down here in the new cards section, you say, all right, cool, there's 2 advertisements on where to see all the new cards. Let's go over to Mobalytics and let's watch. Let's see these new cards. Waiting, waiting, waiting. I actually pulled this up hours ago and it was doing this, and I pulled this up yesterday and it was doing this as well. This is something that I find to be very, very upsetting. I've worked with some of the small time sites in the past. I've worked with some of the small time trackers in the past. One of their big boosts and visibility type things was Riot posting on their front page that the spoilers were coming. They used to link to other trackers and other sites in terms of places to get the card spoilers. They cut that out maybe like 6 months into the release of the game. And then they really just limited it to some of the big guys. And I really understand why they want to leave the big kind of advertisement that is spoiler season up to someone like Mobalytics. This is one of the giants and trackers over in the League of Legends space, but I don't want to say that they've given up on Runeterra, but it doesn't really feel like their heart is there. And so a lot of the smaller time sites that were kind of relying on Riot for the visibility just all had to shut down. They lost out to the big guns like Mobalytics, and now this is what you get out of Mobalytics. I think it's fucking embarrassing, and stuff like this really gets me upset. And so still waiting. Maybe they'll turn up at some point, you know. At least this other site, whatever the DAC.gg has it up. I typically go to runeterra.ar. Runeterra.ar also has the new cards up, if that's something that you would prefer to use. Look at this. They managed to get them up here. No advertisements from Riot, no help from them, but they did manage to get it up to where the big guys didn't do it. I'm sorry, you can skip on past that, but that's just one of those things that really bothers me. But with that out of the way, in terms of the new cards, I wanted to pull up the patch notes and wait on the patch notes because as the last set came out, we saw some changes to Crackshot Corsair and some changes to Imperial Demolitionist right before the patch came out. No changes this time. Nothing to the landmarks, nothing new, nothing old, no balance changes whatsoever, just a collection of new cards. And so we can kind of take the end of the season, the land of seasonals, if you will, and use that as kind of the base point moving forward as we look at these new cards. Okay, so the first card I wanted to call out was the Windswept Hillock. I'm sure this gets lots of hype across the world as everyone wants to build with Yasuo, and I still stand by the viewpoint that Yasuo is just garbage. I've always felt like, at least in terms of Expedition, that Yasuo was just like one card away from popping off, and he has gotten that like one card every set for the last 5 sets, and he's still just pure garbage. And so I'm falling directly into the camp that Yasuo was just a garbage card, and there's really no reason to ever play it outside of a card like Windswept Hillock, to where you might say want to include a copy of Yasuo in your deck to potentially draw him off the landmark. And so that's the first one I wanted to call out. No real deck building advice here. Just don't play Yasuo. you queue up on the old ladder, you see Yasuo pop up, and you're like, cool, I just get a free win today. That feels pretty good, and I love it. But no, I did want to call this card out because I do think it brings some interesting aspects to the game in this. When you gain the attack token Stun the strongest enemy, this is a very powerful aggressive ability in just shutting off your opponent's strongest blocker. And then there is some, of course, potential use with it if you can use some rallies, whether or not that's rallying on your opponent's attack token to shut down a piece of their attack, or rallying on your own turn to stun 2 of your opponent's units as you're attacking twice. Lots of kind of interesting possibilities with this stun ability, but on a 5 mana landmark is just not a place to be including that in your deck. If this ability costs like 1 or maybe 2 mana, then sure, you could do it, but this is unfortunately a card that you have to play because you are playing Yasuo, and it's probably just way too expensive to be a card to include in your deck just because this stun type ability is so good. Okay, then the next thing we need to talk about are the husks. This is a very ingrained piece of this expansion. This works with Gwen, as we'll be pulling her up. This works with Evelynn, as we'll be pulling her up. Doesn't work with Kaisa, but this is what a lot of the cards in the set are built around. There's a lot of ways to just generate these. So first and foremost, with the husks, you can't actually include them in your deck. These aren't deck building cards. These are all created by other cards. And so you can't say, wow, this Shuriman way to give out Spell Shield is so fantastic. You have to have a way to actually generate that. And I was going to kind of like save it for the end of the video to have like a biggest winners and a biggest losers kind of section. And like my biggest winner for this set was just RNGesus. I feel like these things are going to be ultimately fairly frustrating. I like the idea behind what's happening here, but I can already tell we're going to lose some games because opponent husked into an elusive. We're going to lose some games because opponent husked into a spell shield, and it's going to be annoying as fuck. But I do think it's a fairly kind of interesting mechanic. I think we'll get a lot out of it. But yeah, my big winner for the set was RNGesus. Just out here summoning the tilt monster, just bringing the hatred forth for everyone that hates RNG. But you know what I tell them? Just go play chess or something, right? We're here because the RNG's great. So if you don't like RNG, go play chess. Go play Go. Nobody wants to hear it. But in terms of the husk, the one thing that is not RNG related that Riot certainly could have done better with is if you look at the top row, the first 5 of these all have immobile to the left, and then the ability to the right. You go to the Desperate Husk, immobile to the left, ability to the right. You go down here to the second row, 1, 2, 3, 4. These guys all have immobile to the left, then the ability to the right. You get down here to the P and Z guy. He's got the ability on the left and then the immobile on the right. Come on, Riot. You're better than that. You can do better than this. Get it fixed. Get it fixed. But no, I wanted to call out the husks first as they lead into a lot of the discussion that I want to push forth further. And so the first thing I want to kind of talk about is Gwen. If we want to pull up Gwen, she has this ability with Harrow as to where she's seeing some of these units die. When these units die, they push abilities onto something else. I think you can kind of take 2 angles with Gwen. The first one is, do I play something like really aggressive and try and bolster this harrowed ability, or do I play something more mid-rangey and try to take advantage of slays, whether or not that's with, say, like Callista or with Nasus or with Kindred or whatever, some kind of slay type ability. And I think in terms of the husks, that's where you're going to look towards Slayers kind of stuff. And then I think Gwen is actually going to want to look towards more aggressively centered type strategies. And so if we kind of like take a peek at some of the Gwen cards, Boisterous Host here is most certainly something that we want to get down in the very early game and then immediately just trade away. Displays fantastically in aggressively styled decks if you can come down, trade, and then get that +1 attack bonus for the remainder of the game. Same thing can be said with the Phantom Butler. Another fantastically strong early game play. A 3-attack fearsome for 2 mana is a pretty good deal. And then if you get the Harrowed upside for the remainder of the game, that is pretty good and strong as well. I think what is going to be interesting in terms, of Harrowed is whether or not we try to go all in and also try to include like the Ghostly Bands and the Conductor of the Mists. I don't initially think so. I'm usually pretty wrong, and so maybe that's the way it'll end up being. But I look at cards here like the Conductor of the Mists and say, oh wow, this is a 3-drop that just trades with our opponent's 1-drop. I'm not particularly excited about that, even if it does have this Last Breath ability attached to it. I look at things like the Ghostly Paramour and say, oh wow, this is a 3-attack unit for 4 mana. That's not particularly aggressive at all. I don't think there's a lot of synergy between all of these strategies, and I think we'll end up just playing, some of these early game hallowed type units, and then try to pair that off with something a little bit more aggressive. And so the first thing that I immediately think of when it comes to that something a little bit more aggressive kind of thing is going over to Demacia. I really like the idea of rallies with Gwen and Harrowed. If you have Harrowed, you get to use that ability multiple times in the same turn with a rally. And so that's a pretty powerful thing to be doing. It's just a no effort way to get an extra 4 or 6 or 8 attack in a single turn. And then I think a lot of these abilities also play kind of interesting with the likes of Lucian, right? There is a lot of this kind of dead allies theme that pairs off into Demacia. You have Lucian, you have the elite thing that draws a card. Lots of ways to take advantage of your units dying. And I think a lot of these cards, even like Ghostly Band, as to where it generates 2 ephemeral units, it gives us a lot of interesting combos in terms of using Lucian and using rallies and kind of tying that all together. And so I don't think Gwen is super interested in going all in with these abilities, but I think the rallies are quite important. And as we talked about in our kind of Gwen preview the other day, if you're not doing it with rallies, you still probably want to be looking towards like overwhelms or looking towards elusives. And that's not to say that you can't just find a strong Noxan way to use overwhelms, a strong Ionian way to make elusives work. And so you can play Ionia, play Zed, play Ghost, play some minor ephemeral themes, whatever. You have a lot of synergistic options that can run around with Gwen, but I think that she's going to want to lean to being on the aggressive end of the spectrum and not so much the mid-rangey slayers end of the spectrum. Okay, and so after Gwen, the next thing I wanted to do was cycle back to the Husks and see how we can maybe perhaps take advantage of those. That does always push you back to Evelynn. If you haven't seen Evelynn yet, she is the new Runeterra champion. She has the ability similar to Jhin and to Bard, where you get the bonus deck building restriction, if you will, bonus deck building bonus restriction, restrictive bonus to where you can put any cards into your deck that summon husks. And so there's a variety of cards that summon husks. You can't play the husks yourselves. If you shoot over to Shadow Isles, you can see things here like Salter, that when he comes into play summons a husk. Down here to the bottom left you have Vora. When she's summoned, you also get to summon a husk. And so in terms of Evelynn, I'm not entirely sure, right? The Husk cards out here are kind of few and far between. If we looked at someone like Alawi, she was just kind of having to play basically every single tentacle card in the game to really pop off. And that just kind of worked, right? There was plenty of that to go around. But I'm not entirely certain that there's enough Husk type things with Evelynn in the format to make kind of a dedicated build-around deck. We'll just have to kind of see if jamming every Husk into a deck along with Evelynn works. We'll see if Evelynn actually functions like Bard, where you just pick a champion, put all of the chime cards in your deck, and you're good to go. Maybe that's actually how the Husks will work as well. I really can't tell. I think it's just too far out to see and feel how that works. I will concede that Evelynn does potentially have a lot of power, especially when she's able to come out and pick up abilities like Elusive or pick up abilities like Overwhelm. But in terms of Evelynn on her own and full on Evelynn build-arounds, I'm not so sure. But there are some kind of interesting things you can look to do with these Husk abilities. As we swing back to Shadow Isles and we did pull up units like Salter, this does work fantastically with the Slayers kind of themes. We might have to kind of get out of the ideas of Slayers that we were doing in the past, where you're trying to kill off a whatever the 1/1 is, the Escaped Abomination Maker, right? Where he's the real core of the deck and the Fading Icon. That style of deck that kills off those early game plays for some kind of bonus. That doesn't feel like exactly what you're looking to do here with the Husks, but it is kind of interesting that you can play this unit, you get the Husk on board, you can play something else just by playing it and getting a Slay, and then you still have this kind of bad unit hanging out ready to sacrifice off. Or you can, use these things where you say maybe it's turn 6, you play Salter, and then you follow up with Kindred. You automatically get the Slay, and then the Kindred gets a little bit stronger. Lots of kind of like interesting chains that you can piece together in the Slayer's decks. Just whether or not shifting away from the kind of aggressive end of the spectrum that you would see out of like a Thresh Nasus, and then moving perhaps more towards the more controlly end of the spectrum that you would see out of more like a Kindred Ionia style deck. And so there are lots of powerful ways to kind of go about this, and I think it's very interesting that you aren't really just kind of like pigeonholed into using the early aggressive style slay targets. And so that is kind of cost number one. We all know those aren't really the decks that I ever like to play, but some of the things I did think were pretty interesting with the with the husks would be the likes of using Demacia, and that lets you kind of say use something like Durandi Sculptor. So you have Durandi Sculptor down, you summon a husk, then it gets the +1 attack or the +1 health. I'm sorry, and then your future unit will also get the +1 bonus from the Durandi Sculptor, but then get the +2 health bonus from the Husk. And so you get these really kind of interesting chains of summons out of using a card like Durandi Sculptor. We used to be kind of just limited to the likes of Mirai Warden and the likes of the Scout Summoner thing, whatever. But you have a lot of very easy to activate kind of engine styles here in terms of using things like Durandi Sculptor. The next thing that really kind of pairs into are the formidable units, and mainly so in the likes of Petricite Broadwing. And so if you have these chains as to where you have the Durandi Sculptor on board, you summon a Husk Summoner, if you will, who cares which one it is. You get the bonus to health Husk, and then you play your Petricite Broadwing, gets the double bonuses of all of the health to become an extremely powerful unit. And so I do think it's kind of interesting in terms of formidable, mainly in the Broadwing, but all of the other formidable units, and then just kind of any way that you have to boost your plays that can also boost the husks. That kind of leads me to the next idea of the one cost units matter kind of thing. You would see it out of P and Z. You see it out of Bilgewater a little bit. This was the Fishbones deck in Expedition for those of you all that hung around for the limited formats, into where you have things like Jagged Taskmaster and Professor Von Yip to give a boost to the smaller units. You can, of course, use those style of abilities with all of the husks as well. And so I thought that was kind of interesting in terms of in Shurima, there is a new husk style card here in Domination, which summons a husk, but then also when you summon a one-cost ally, you grant it +1 attack. And so she has a way to spread out the +1 attacks across all of your units. And so I thought that was kind of an interesting and powerful type ability. The thing that I always end up thinking of whenever I see this one cost stuff is just how do we take advantage of Poro Cannon, right? Poro Cannon is just like the big and the real deal these days. It's one of those things that makes you just like so happy that the Boom Baboon and the Flame Chompers are both just 2-cost units, right? So you're not having to deal with the Flame Chompers just getting boosted by everything. But there is, this like usage with, the one cost matters getting a boost kind of thing. I, of course, love the Poro Cannons, and you have these kind of synergies across the board in terms of using the husks and getting the bonuses there. The other thing I wanted to call out with Domination, I never really play the likes of the tokens deck, but it is kind of interesting for tokens as well, right? When you're generating Blade Dances and generating Sand Soldiers, people used to play at one point the like 5 or the 6 cost unit that gives +2 attack. It is pretty expensive, and I don't feel like it gets any play anymore, but there may be something in Domination here in terms of Blade Dances or in terms of Sand Soldier generation, now that you can give bonuses out on a cheaper unit. Okay, and up next we have Kaisa, and if you followed along with us at Seasonals, I do really love a good Papercraft Dragon deck. We took both Papercraft Gnar and we brought Fizz Riven to Seasonals. Love every minute of play in those things, and it looks like we're getting a lot more tools for the Papercraft Dragon style decks. And so I don't want to just like immediately pigeonhole Kaisa into only doing things like big OTKs, but that's what she strikes me as being really good at doing. And whether or not that is just being a 6/6 attacker that probably has Overwhelm, in addition to having this attack ability that does damage equal to her keywords, she looks like she's going to be pretty happy in terms of doing these big Overwhelm-based OTKs. And so we have Kaisa herself. We have the addition of Supercharge, which she flips into, giving a unit Overwhelm and Spell Shield. And then we also have the Void Blaster unit down here, which is another meaty style overwhelm play. And so I can't like decide which is immediately better, which is the strongest way to pursue a Kaisa, whether or not you would want to do a action Sivir type play to where you're using golden Aegiuses, or if you want to just go the full OTK route with the Papercraft Dragon. I don't know. I don't know what's best. I just know it's going to be fucking awesome and we're going to do it. And so that's the kind of easy way to look at it and to say it. And so to look towards like actually pulling off evolves, I do think you probably want to look towards that action Sivir style route. That gives you the options to play some of the Demacia based units that have a bunch of keywords. It lets you pick up challengers pretty easy. And that also gives you the kind of passage to pick up some lucky finds. And so just very easy with those style of decks to play a lot of cards that you want to be playing. You can pick up the Challenger off of the Demacia cards. You can get Quick Attack off of action. You have pretty reasonable units and things like Befell the Elder down here that has both Spell Shield and Evolve. I think the thing is you have to be playing units that are just kind of good on their own that also have the keywords attached to them. I don't think you want to be going like super all in on just playing all these weird things with keywords just to pull it off. I don't think you want to be playing Husks just to pull it off. I think you can pretty reasonably pick a collection of cards that can just generate keywords. And so if you're wanting to do the Evolve thing, maybe you do look to play some Lucky Finds, whether or not that's with Profiteer or with Vicar and Bruiser. Action feels like he's going to be pretty strong there as well. But you have lots of very good kind of board control aspects, and then you, of course, get access to the rallies as well. And so I think there could be something interesting there along the lines of a base Demacia Shurima kind of thing. Or, of course, with the Papercraft Dragons and now having access to Supercharge, that really lets you kind of branch out for the units that you want to use for your OTKs, right? You used to have a unit that had Overwhelm on it, or you had to play Noxus like you do with Fizz Riven to go and pick up the Reforges and the Mites and the like. Now that Shurima has a way to pick up Overwhelms, and especially strong with having Spell Shields, you can kind of go this Papercraft Dragon route with another angle. The other important thing to call out with Supercharge in terms of the Papercraft Dragon are the way a lot of your games would sequence would be you couldn't play your Papercraft Dragon until like turn 6, right? You would have to play your big Ruin Runner on turn 5. You would have to roll into turn 6. Then you could play the Papercraft Dragon, and you would have 4 spell mana built up to do whatever you needed to hopefully end the game. Now you can potentially try and finish these off a little bit earlier. You can say bank on your first 2 turns, play whatever on 3. On turn 4, you might get to play a Void Blaster, and then turn 5, get your Papercraft Dragon down. Just letting your curve happen on turn 4 gives a lot of power to potentially kill with units that don't have Overwhelm. So say you want to play the 6 attack Reputation unit. You can play the 6 attack Reputation unit, put a Papercraft Dragon on it on turn 5, and then get that supercharged Overwhelm attack in for 16 damage. And so it gives you a bit of variety as to where the units don't naturally have to have access to Overwhelm. And I think this is, just at the end of the day, going to make a lot of really sweet OTK-based decks, and I am on board for all of those. And okay, before we let you go, I did want to go through my hottest takes section, give you the spiciest of beliefs as you're getting them from the best player in the world. And so, Riptide Sermon, I think this is probably just got to be the best card out of the set. It does so much. I was really interested with the release of the Worldwalker expansion and just like how much we were going to see Tentacle Slam outside of the Alawi decks. And it made its way mainly out in Nami Twisted Fate, but you could be pretty certain that basically every Bilgewater deck in the format was playing either the Nagakaboro's draw card thing, or it was playing Tentacle Slam, or it was playing both. And now, with Riptide Sermon, it gives you the way to really pick up 3 of these tentacle cards, and they're all both extremely good, and you just don't have to be playing Alawi for them to be good. And so, with the Riptide Sermon, dealing 4 to a unit, making a 3/3 unit, and then dealing 2 to the enemy Nexus does a little bit of everything, and it's all extremely worth it, I do believe. Just quite a good deal for 6 mana. This would be the kind of Flame Tongue Kavu of Runeterra, if you will. 4 damage is nothing to scoff at. That kills pretty much everything. A 3/3 unit is a pretty good deal. And then the 2 damage to the Nexus is quite relevant in any aggressive deck or in any deck looking to do things like make a plunder. And so I kind of look at this as like 4 damage at slow speed, probably worth like 3 mana. That's about what you get out of an Aftershock. A Spawn 3 probably worth about 2 mana, and then the Deal 2 probably worth about 1 mana. So it's kind of like priced as you would expect, but this is a lot of stuff really like tossed together within a single card. And I think we're going to be seeing bunches and bunches of this in the near future, especially as you're able to chain together a lot of these tentacle things and just get some good minor synergies out of each of them. I expect big things out of the Riptide Sermon. The biggest sleeper, the one that nobody's going to play, and then they go, oh shit, this is actually good. I'm giving that one to Sneezy Biggledust. This one, my thing with this is there's so many decks in the format right now that are all designed on the back of using Poro cannons and using the Flame Chompers. Just the core of so many good decks. We're currently seeing it mainly done with the Winding Light decks, but this was done pretty well with the likes of Yordles in Arms. And we did play lots of Yordles in Arms decks that were just starting to play the thing that lets you discard a card to give your team +1/+1 for a turn. And that was worth it quite frequently. But the big things that you get out of cards like the Biggledust are you have the opportunities for elusive units in the Poros. You have opportunities in the Challengers, but we're starting to see cards like Winding Light make its way in to just give a +6 bonus to your entire board. And so 12 stats for 2 mana is a pretty good deal. But with the Biggledust, you could realistically have 3 and 4 created cards on the board. And very easily be passing out 10 and 12 and 16 stats at burst speed for 4 mana. And so I think this is probably one that I could definitely see getting slept on. And I think we're definitely going to have to bring the Yordles back out, see if we can't get some big booms with the Biggledust. The next one on the list was the biggest winner. And of course, we already mentioned it. The biggest winner was RN Jesus with all of the Husk units. Can't wait when we hit Fury and just get mad. Can't wait when someone hits Spell Shield right before we're about to play a removal spell. I can't wait until we have a commanding board and our opponent kills us with an elusive. It's going to be great. RN Jesus is going to be here upon us. Everyone is going to be dropping lots of hatred towards these Husks. I think it's unfortunate. It seems like such an interesting ability, but so many times this is just going to cause a big stir of hatred. And so welcome aboard, RN Jesus. You're the big winner of the day. And the last one before we let you go, this is what I'm calling the biggest loser of the format and rite of passage. I see people getting so hype about copying a Time Bomb. Who gives a shit? I see a lot of people getting really hype about copying Warlord's Palaces that counts down from 8. I have no idea why people want to be copying the likes of Frozen Thralls, but everybody wants to be doing all that. The thing that I was kind of interested in copying with the Rite of Passage was just the Rockhopper thing, whatever that instant blow-up landmark is, just as a way to kind of burst some plays onto the board. And take away your opponent's ability to react from them. It's like when I look at a card like Rite of Passage, I see it being as I can burst Roiling Sands onto the board or do something else, right? I think the vast majority of the time that's what you're looking to do, but then there'll be some other, something else factors, like maybe we're playing a copy of this in the Sun Disk as kind of backup protection to our Sun Disk getting blown up or something. Like, it sounds miserable as it comes out of my mouth, but I don't think there's a lot of value in cards like Rite of Passage, and I think that there's a lot of people getting overly hyped for no reason over this thing. But there you have it, our initial preview of the new expansion. I can't remember the name. Forces from Beyond. Agree or disagree with any of our hot takes, so I'd love to hear it down in the comments. And you all have yourselves a good one out there. Enjoy that happy deck building in your future.